Canada just hit a record that nobody's celebrating. While the Liberals keep rejoicing about growth, the people who built their lives here are packing up and they're leaving. It's record-breaking exodus of prime, working-aged Canadians leaving behind careers, communities, and the country they once believed offered opportunity. So what's changed, and why are so many losing faith that Canada is still the place to build their future? Let's dig in.
As I said to them earlier, we are in a nation-building era, and immigration will be central to that work. The backdrop for today's discussion is the significant change that we've been able to bring as a federal government over the last 13 months. It's wonderful to have perspectives, and we do our best as parliamentarians to serve Canadians regardless of what the policy issues are.
All right, let's look at the recently released Statistics Canada numbers that the government would rather you not. There's 120,640 people who have formally left the country last year, to be exact. The quarterly breakdown sums exactly to that amount. The first quarter saw 29.8 thousand flee, second quarter 24.7, third 41.2, and fourth quarter 24.9 thousand. That's up from the previous record of roughly 118,000 in 2024, and it blows past anything seen before. The website Immigration to Canada broke it down. The average from the last 1950s to 1970s peak was roughly 100,000 immigrants, which was the last comparable outflow. And the annual average from 2020 to 2024 was anywhere from 70 to 95,000, which was elevated but not record-breaking. For context, Canada's population sits around 41 million. Losing roughly 0.3% of the population doesn't sound like much until you realize these aren't random leavers. A huge chunk are exactly the demographic every country fights to keep: educated, working-age adults in their 20s, 30s, and early 40s. The data captures both Canadian-born citizens and permanent residents, and it's a hard count that comes from tax filings and administrative records, not some soft, potentially biased survey. And the destinations? Well, the US ranks number 1, and then the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. Retirees and remote workers are also heading to lower-cost spots like Mexico, Portugal, and Costa Rica. Talk to anyone who's left or is planning to, and the reasons come out the same way every single time. Housing, rents in big cities like Toronto, Halifax, Vancouver, and even smaller spots like Kitchener have roughly doubled in a decade. Even a family earning $100,000 a year can barely make ends meet in this economy, a salary that used to be considered pretty good. Home ownership for the middle class, well, that's become a fantasy in the biggest job markets. And then there's wages. A software engineer in Vancouver might pull in an average of roughly $130,000 Canadian, but that same role in Seattle sits about $180,000 US dollars. And that's before you factor in Canada's significantly higher tax burden and the soaring cost of housing. In many cases, skilled workers can earn more, keep more of what they make, and still enjoy a lower cost of living just a few hours south of the border. Across industries like tech, engineering, and finance, professionals can often earn anywhere from an average of 20 to 40% more elsewhere. And while that in and of itself is attractive to everyone, especially young people and young families looking for a bright and promising future to raise children, this isn't just about the paycheck. It's also the everyday reality that wears people down. Waiting months to see a specialist, watching the cost of groceries and housing climb faster than their income, and feeling like the promise that hard work leads to a better life is slipping further out of reach. Immigration Minister Lena Diab claims to have made substantial changes to Canada's broken immigration system, yet repeatedly fails to acknowledge that it was the Liberal government that has been in power for more than a decade that got us into this mess in the first place.
The backdrop for today's discussion is the significant change that we've been able to bring as a federal government over the last 13 months. We've reduced temporary worker and student arrivals by 73% this year compared to 2024. We've passed significant reforms to our asylum system and have brought claims down by 63%. The non-permanent resident population has dropped for 18 straight months, and rents have fallen for 20. We are on track to meet our commitments regarding the temporary resident population, and the PBO has confirmed as much. We have refocused our permanent immigration pathways on health professionals, on home builders, leading researchers, and other skilled workers.
For years, we were told that record immigration was the solution to labor shortages and an aging population. Targets climbed, temporary residents flooded in, but housing starts never kept pace and infrastructure lagged. Now, the people who were already here and the ones with Canadian experience, Canadian credentials, Canadian roots are the ones walking out the door.
Our approach to immigration must be balanced and well managed. It has to complement our domestic workforce, not replace it, while attracting and keeping the best talent from around the world. We will prioritize provincial and territorial needs. We will respect their role and continue our targeted efforts to support small and rural communities.
Minister Diab can claim that the immigrant-heavy workforce has to complement our existing workforce, not replace it, but this data paints a very different picture, and in practice, it creates a revolving door. Lose experienced workers, import new ones who face the same affordability wall, and hope they stay longer than the Canadians who were pressure cooked right out of here. Statistics Canada's data and independent analysis show that both permanent residents and Canadians have been leaving at higher rates for years. Even highly skilled and educated immigrants are the most likely to leave Canada within 5 years of arriving, said the Leaky Bucket 2025 report from the Institute for Canadian Citizenship. The main drivers are, as always, housing, healthcare, and underemployment.
Obviously, when we talk about immigration, the challenges that we faced, which is why we've reduced the numbers in our levels plan, were due to shortages of housing and services that are available. Again, it is something that we will continue to work on with all the provinces and territories. Again, some of the issues you raised are strictly in provincial domain.
While population estimates for late 2025 actually showed quarterly declines, the first sustained drop in a long time, that's driven largely by these tighter temporary resident rules. But the damage to retention is already visible in this immigration spike. And again, all of this is only part of the equation. Retaining newcomers and getting Canadians to stay also depends on the quality of life and sense of security Canada offers. As Global News recently reported, intelligence officials have identified key members of the Bishnoi gang operating in Canada, and that should serve as a stark reminder of just how important it is that immigration policy not be separated from broader government mandates of enforcement, integration, and the capacity of systems to keep pace. Regardless, if the people aged 25 to 45 keep leaving at this pace, the tax base shrinks, the skills shortage deepens, and the pressure on the remaining population intensifies. But without fixing the underlying cost of living crisis, we're just accelerating the cycle. For those still deciding whether to stay or whether to go, the data is clear. The United States remains the biggest magnet for higher pay. Canada still has enormous strengths, but strength doesn't automatically translate into retention when the daily math of housing, wages, and opportunity stops adding up. Ask the Liberals, are they even listening or just replacing the people who leave while calling it progress? For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Ugolini. Canadians are suffering as a result of uncontrolled immigration under the leadership of Prime Minister Mark Carney. The cost of living has soared, there's inadequate housing, and our social welfare system is buckling at the seams. Please sign our petition at netzeroimmigration.com to demand that Carney stop the unmitigated influx of immigrants to Canada and support our journalism on this file if you appreciate it. That's netzeroimmigration.com.